Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream. We're doing a weird live stream on a Sunday. I wonder how many people will tune in live. So if you're watching this live, let us know in the chat. For those who are new here and who have never been to my live streams, my name is Nadia. I am a self-taught software engineer, a DevRel engineer, a UK Global Talent Visa recipient and coach. So my story to the visa started last year when I was preparing my documents for the visa on my own. I went through the process of getting endorsed as a software engineer. It was pretty intense, so it was quite difficult to do this on my own. But I did it. I got endorsed from the first attempt, which is not very common, as I learned later. And since then, I've just been very interested in the topic of this visa and the topic of how immigration and how talent immigration enables people to fulfill their life potential and really take their lives to a new level in a new country. So this is what this YouTube channel, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, is about. So there is a lot of content here about the visa, about all the ways you can apply for it and the ways you can qualify for it. And also I do live streams regularly where I interview talented IT professionals who got endorsed for the visa, where they share their stories of their success. So if you would like to work with me towards your visa, you can check out all the ways I help people on my website. It's called middlehope.com/talent is where all the services are described. So you probably have heard the news of Tech Nation, which is the not onboarding, endorsing body getting closed down on March 31st. So this has been recorded on the 12th of February. So everything that we're saying is relevant, up to date. So it's all according to kind of the rules of endorsement that are relevant now, and until Technician shuts down, what will happen afterwards, we really don't know. So I do hope that this live stream will help you if you are now applying for the visa and you are now trying to get your application submitted as soon as possible. So if you're watching this live, make sure to ask your questions and just use this opportunity to ask questions of me and my expert, and just get the information you need to apply as soon as possible. So this is actually a very special live stream for me. All my live streams are special, but today I'm also talking to somebody who was actually my client. So let me bring our guest on, and let me hide this one. Okay. Hi, Tanya. Welcome to the live stream.
Oh, hello. Good morning. Good morning to London.
Yeah.
It's actually already afternoon here where I am, but still. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to be on. So Tanya is actually works as a senior data analyst at Avito, and she was, I think, the first data analyst that I have helped and kind of coached, within this visa process. So I still remember when you reached out with your question whether I help data analysts, and now I can say that I do. So it's really great to have you here. Actually, when I was starting the live streams, my dream was to at some point have people on who reached out to me when they were applying for the visa. And for me, it's kind of seeing those things come full circle from your initial interest in the visa, and then you get endorsed and preparing to come to London, and then also sharing your story on my live stream. So for me, it's such a special live stream. So yes, again, if you're watching this live, let us know in the comments, say hi, and let's just spend this time together talking about the visa and getting inspired by Tanya and her career and her amazing endorsement for the visa. So let's start with some intros as we usually do. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, what you do for a living, kind of what is your career background for people who are watching, so that they can understand how relevant this is for them and what they can use from it.
Okay, sure. So I think my story is pretty straightforward. I'm a mathematician. I had a mathematical education, and then I right away started a career of a data analyst. I've been working as an analyst for, I guess, 5 till 6 years. I can count it accurately. And I am working as a data analyst now as well. So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But I did change the fields that I've been working in. So I started in the game development industry, and then I switched to fintech company. I worked for a year and a half in Tinkoff Bank, which is a digital innovative bank in Russia. And now I'm working in a classifieds Avito site, which is the world's most popular classifieds in the world.
Amazing. So you've already had experience working in innovative industries, gaming, fintech, which are, I think, all really industries that technician kind of likes to get applicants from, basically. So, what is kind of your background story in terms of immigrating to the UK? How did you learn about the visa? Why did you decide to use this visa? Because most people, I think, would the most popular visa for the UK is the skilled worker visa, the usual sponsored visa. So this is kind of a normal way to move here to find a job and get somebody to sponsor you. So did you consider this route, or did you decide to just go for the talent visa immediately?
Well, to be honest, I've never been planning on moving anywhere from Russia. All my previous experience was in Moscow, and I was planning to stay this way. But I had to consider location this year, and I didn't know where I would like to move. So one of the main criteria was to find a place where I can relocate really fast. And also, I'd like it to be a big city where everyone speaks a language that I do understand, which is actually either English or Russian. So it's not a huge choice. Well, at first, I was considering Canada. I've never been to any of these countries. I've never been to the USA. I've never been to Canada. I've never been to the UK. I literally just Googled how things are there. And I don't know what the beautiful places are there and so on. So it was really, really fast. I chose Canada because of some really weird reasons. I like mountains, and Canada has a lot of it. But then I learned that the relocation process to Canada is just really severe. It takes years, and it's really complex. And I realized it's just not for me right now. I want a more quick path. And then I learned about this global talent visa to the UK. I learned about it really just accidentally from a friend of mine. And previously, I thought that the UK is a really closed country. I thought that it's really difficult to get there. And well, actually, I tried a bit of job search at first, but I quickly figured out that it is possible, of course, but it will take like months. And then I learned that the skilled work visa is gets you entitled to your employer. So I figured it's not what I want, like to hop on the first job that I encounter and then to be really tied to it.
Yeah.
So I started to learn more about this global talent thing.
Yeah. Amazing story. I like how you were choosing a place to move to by Googling.
Actually, it
And
was just I was looking at the Google Map.
yeah, I think it's a good approach, actually. So like, I had very similar, I think, kind of what path to the UK. I had never had a chance to visit London before I relocated. So kind of the first day I moved here, I came here was the day I relocated. I've never visited before, and I think that it's actually much more common that people would think. It's just not very usual, but also I think that if you are planning to come here and you are thinking that it's very scary because you have never visited, I don't think that it is like that. Like, you're not alone if you're doing it. A lot of people are doing it, and like, it's not like, I don't know. It's never was a part of my life or kind of surroundings for to travel to London. So, yeah, I think it's much more common than people would realize.
Well,
There is, yeah.
I'd like to mention I'd like to mention one thing. Of all those English-speaking countries like Australia, the USA, Canada, the UK seemed like more or less similar. More or less like close to me because I grew up reading, stories of Sherlock Holmes and Harry Potter things. So I felt like I know London somehow, and everything about Australia, for example, that it's hot there and they have a lot of insects. So London seemed like more approachable.
Yeah, it is more familiar. When you come here, you see that you have seen so many of these places in movies and kind of stories described in books. So it does feel familiar, and I think it's easier to get to become connected to the cities, at least for if you're familiar with the British culture and books and movies and anything like that. So thanks so much for sharing your story and kind of how you ended up choosing the global talent visa. I think a lot of people choose it for the same reasons that you said, that it gives you flexibility, you're not tied to your employer. It's also quite fast if you think about it in terms of getting it. You don't really depend on finding a job first, right? You can prepare your documents and apply whenever you're ready. So I'm really glad to hear that you had the confidence and just the desire to try. And I do hope that this live stream will encourage people to apply sort of last minute when it comes to technician. And I see people coming online, showing support. So keep the support coming, and also make sure to ask your questions, especially if you're now preparing to submit your documents. So I do think it's important to have community and support, and the live stream is kind of your community and supporting environment for you to prepare your documents. So what was your process of applying like? So how did you start your research? And how did you, prepare the document and start preparing them for the visa?
Yeah, I actually wrote down some dates to give you an idea how long it took. So in early this November, I learned about the visa and I started reading about it and started to assess my chances. And I mean, in several days, I thought that, okay, maybe I can qualify for this. And then I started to watch some materials on YouTube about this visa and how to get it. And this is how I came across your channel. So yeah, your videos was really helpful. And I learned that you do some coaching as well. So I reached out to Nadia and asked for her help. After that, Nadia gave me a huge homework to do before the strategy session. But luckily, I've already had done some of this work. The work included like writing down on all your projects and achievements and thinking about all the good things you can say about yourself. So maybe you have some presence in the media or some conferences that you took part in. And I've already done this thing when I wrote to Nadia. So I did this homework really thoroughly. And then we just, on the session, we just started to figure out how we can prove the needed criteria. So which criteria we should choose and how we should frame the evidences into those criteria based on the projects that I had. It was really helpful. I also got to ask all the questions about the process that I had, and there were a lot of them because although the technician guide is so long, it doesn't answer all the questions that you would have. So after the strategy session, I had a plan. I knew which of the optional criteria I should choose and how exactly would the evidence look like to prove them. So,
yeah, so
I can
go ahead,
talk some more about any of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It's
maybe we
kind of
can. So first of all, like I shared the link to the strategy session that you described and the huge homework that I give out to people. So if you're coming over for a session, be prepared to do some brainstorming work. But basically, just brainstorming something that you can do on your own. But this is kind of a structure that I use for sessions, and it has been working pretty well for people. So that's kind of the service that Tanya was describing, just for people watching this. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that it was helpful to you. Maybe we can talk about the criteria that we chose together and kind of how, what was our thinking around the criteria and kind of how do you still remember choosing the criteria? And maybe you can also share how you would advise somebody else to think about it. Because again, as I always say, people just freeze when they see the criteria, and a lot of the times they can't really figure out what they should choose. As you said, technician guide is very long, but also it's not really clear in many of the parts, and people really struggle with the criteria. So maybe you can share something about the process of choosing them, and what did you end up choosing for you?
yeah. So there are 4 optional criteria: academical, innovation, impact, and I guess your impact outside of your main work. And for me, it was more or less straightforward because I didn't have a real academic record, and I also didn't have something to show a side of my work. So the real chance that I had was to prove the impact criteria and the innovation criteria. I guess the impact criteria was the easiest to prove because as an analyst, I did a lot of projects that had the direct impact on the business, and I knew it should qualify for this. It was harder with innovation criteria because it's just, I guess it's the most ambiguous criteria. You don't know what the innovation is, and how to assess your projects. Are they innovative enough? But I thought that I can prove that, for example, the game project that I participated in was innovative. I Googled the name of it, and I saw that some gaming media described it as innovative and new and genre breaking. So I thought this should work out. Also, I had a volunteer job at the scientific laboratory, and although the lab was working on a psychological project, I volunteered there as a data analyst. So I had a project where I kind of invest an algorithm to process the psychology data into something that can be used for computation. And I decided that I can make this the case that it's something innovative. I also participated in a psychology conference with this project. So I have some evidence that I did something important, and it was something new that was worth mentioning during the conference. I needed the third piece of evidence for this innovation criteria, and this was the hardest one, I think. I tried to make a case that one of the experiments that I suggested during my work in a game industry company, that the experiment setup was really new and unusual. And I tried to explain it, and I also supported it with a reference letter of my colleague. I don't know if it's a good advice or not, but I decided to make this easier for technician. So in each of these evidence pieces, I just put there a bullet point with the highlighted question, why is this innovative? And just below this question, I just explained why they should believe it is. So
Yeah.
I
Just
don't
make
know
it really easy for them, to understand. This is why it's
I
innovative.
don't know if it worked or not, but it convinced myself at least that it was innovative.
Well, you have the endorsement, so it worked, I guess. It's really amazing.
Yeah,
If I may, I wanted to unpack this a little bit in more detail because people always want to hear in more detail about kind of the document and how it's structured, right? So, for instance, if we take an example of the experiment, right, the last one that was the hardest one to fulfill. So, could you explain a little bit about the format? So, you described like high level what it was, then you said the bullet point kind of question and getting answered. So maybe you can talk a little bit about in detail, like the implementation details of a document like this, so that people can just take it and apply it to their own situation. Considering the fact that people are trying to prepare the documents now in like 5 days. So I think it really helps
yeah.
them to just learn like how this is done, so that they can do it this way, like a similar way, something like this, and just get the application in without doing any research. So anything around the topic of innovation, I think, would be really helpful, since this is something that people really struggle with proving.
Okay, so all the pieces were just PDF documents where I tried to put everything that was needed into those 3 pages limit. Mostly it was just plain text that I wrote myself, explaining the project and, for example, here why it was innovative. And also it contains some media. For example, it contained links to every source that I mentioned. For example, I put there some screenshots of gaming media mentioning the game that I worked on, saying it was new and groundbreaking. And also included the links to every source that was there. For some projects, I just asked my former colleagues to make a screenshot of Jira or Confluence, wherever there's my name on it, and there is something like some artifacts of my work. So, for example, I'm claiming that I did some experiment, but as an analyst, I don't have really any hard evidence to prove this, apart from those Confluence pages and some guys, some kind colleagues of mine who were who were able to prove it. So most of the evidences they did include some reference letters as a part. So, for example, there were 3 pages. They started with the explanation in just text, and then it had some screenshots, and the last page contained the letter, for example, where some good people vouched for me.
Yeah.
In some cases, I also included, like, some names and phone numbers and mail addresses for further inquiry. So if you'd like to learn more about this project, you can contact these people.
Yeah. This is very, I think, similar to. So this is a pretty common format that I recommend people use, and I see people use everywhere. So with TechNation, I think what people should understand is that there is no requirement when it comes to the format of a lot of those documents, which makes it difficult for people to start. So I do recommend people adopt a format similar to what Tanya is describing, similar to what a lot of people do, just keeping it very simple. Having the 3 pages in mind, having a Google document where you, for instance, talk about the innovation. So as Tanya said, it can be a self. So if you think about documents, they are divided into several categories. Some are written by somebody else, so these are the big ones, the big letters of recommendation, the 3-page ones. But then you also have 10 slots for evidences, and some of those evidences would be actually self-written documents that Tanya is describing now. So this is you explaining basically, so, why is this an innovation, and you explain why this is an innovation, and you find external proof for your words. As Tanya said, it's necessary for, especially for all the criteria actually, to show that you worked on this thing, right? So as Tanya said, like, you need to demonstrate some graphical proof that you are connected to this project. Because if you submit just an article about your game, for instance, right, and nothing else, it doesn't really prove that you worked on it. You need something else. So ideally, something like a screenshot from Jira or something like this. This works really well, and just I've seen a lot of people be successful with this approach. If you can't get any access to any of those artifacts, it's not always possible, right? Usually people would reach out to their friends and ask them, okay, can I get like something, and like obviously you would only get a screenshot of the necessary part. You wouldn't divulge any kind of company data, anything like that. The idea is just to prove that you worked on it, right? And one thing that I also like that you did was leave a contact information of somebody else who can vouch for it. This is something that I also advise to do. So if you have a self-written kind of page with the screenshots, you can add information that this is my manager, reach out to them, they will confirm what I'm saying here. And this is a way to back this up as well. So this is, I really like you sharing this approach to one of the most complex criteria, I think, for the optional criteria number 1, the innovation criteria, which a lot of people are afraid to choose, but I don't think that it's actually the hardest one to meet. So I think that if you can make a case for innovation, then I think you're good to go. When it comes to another criteria, the third criteria, right, the significant contribution, could you tell us a little bit more about the documents that you used to meet that criteria as well?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to ask for 1 second to fix this sun, because
okay, sure.
I liked it, but now it's just too bright.
Sure, yeah. Just let me do the solo live stream. Yep. As we wait for Tanya to come back.
Better.
Okay, she's back.
Way better.
Cool.
Yeah, so about mandatory criteria, right?
About the significant contribution criteria. So optional criteria number 3. Yeah.
So the second criteria that I chose was impact criteria. To prove that, I decided to pick 3 projects that I did actually in 3 different companies that had a direct impact on the business. So I could state the numbers, some metrics that were affected by these projects. For example, during making this game that I mentioned previously, I did an experiment that brought up the paying user metrics. So I explained what exactly I did and how it influenced this metric and why this metric was crucial for the project. Again, as a extra proof of my words, I used a reference letter from a colleague who was working closely with me on this project. Another piece of evidence on this criteria was the business process that I built when I worked in Tinkoff Bank. I explained again what was the issue, how I noticed that something needed to be changed, what exactly I suggested, and how it worked out. So just to give you more details, because from an analytics perspective, it was a process about assessing new ideas and test them via analytical experiments. So I could claim that this process increase the effectiveness of all the experiments that were done in the team. The third one was about my current work in Avito. I also described an experiment that I did. Actually, at the time of application, I didn't know the results of the experiment, but I did know that it brought some significant amount of money in the moment when it came out. And as an evidence of this, I shared some screenshot of our business chat that we used, where some of top management noticed this impact and asked what was this. And below I described that, yeah, it was my experiment, I did this and this, and this is how it worked out. Also, all of these facts about my impact were mentioned in the main letters of recommendation to make sure it all adds up.
Yeah. Amazing. Like, I really like your approach. It sounds very like elegant and simple in a way. It doesn't mean like it's easy to write documents this way, but it's simple kind of in a good way. It's clear structure, and it's not really trying to complicate things too much, right? Because I do see people sometimes really start complicating things with their cases and procrastinate a little bit. I feel like that it takes people so much time to get started with the application because they are worried about the format. They're not sure that their projects are impactful enough or something like this. But I really like how you just went ahead and quickly gathered the documents. And it was incredibly quick, I think, in your case. So you said that it took you a few days to just understand that you're uh, potentially eligible for the visa, which is, I don't know, like a million times faster than it takes most people. A lot of people, they spend like years, thinking of whether they should apply or not. So, and then when you start preparing the documents, I think it was also very quick. So how long did it take you to prepare all of the documents?
Yeah, I did some calculation. It took me 3.5 weeks to do everything from like planning with you during our strategy session to submitting an application. And 1 week of all of these 3.5, I was just waiting for the last guy to sign another letter of recommendation, so I could have done it quickly.
So it was 2.5 weeks from the strategy session to you apply, like in preparation, right? Without waiting for the last letter. So like preparing the documents took you 2.5 weeks after the strategy.
Yeah, I put a lot of effort into it. Of course, I spent all my free time doing it during these weeks. I even took a small vacation days off from my main work to do it even quicker, because I figured, okay, I can't influence how long technician will consider my application, how long all the process will go without me, but the parts that I can influence, it's that.
Yeah.
So I
Amazing.
want to do it as quick as possible.
Yeah. So you did it on top of a full-time job, and just spending all of your free time doing it. I think it's incredible, and just kudos to you on doing it so quickly. I do hope that this live stream serves as an inspiration for a lot of people, because it does feel like if you're applying right now, you should do it as quickly, I think, as Tanya did it, or quicker or something like this. But basically as quick as possible. But it just shows you that it's possible, even if you have a full-time job, right? You can still do it, and you can prepare a successful application. I think that what takes people a lot of time just doing the preliminary research and understanding like what they need to do, how they need to start. And I think that once you have the strategy, you at least know what to do, and then you need to do it. It's not to say that it's easy from that on. It's still very difficult. But just kind of try to find a way just to get started as quickly as possible, and then the implementation. I think that it's better not to complicate things too much and just follow Tanya's winning strategy for the documents. And I think that you will have a much stronger chances of getting endorsed. So you also mentioned the mandatory criteria. You mentioned the letters of recommendation, the big letters, right? The three ones. Maybe we can talk about them, since this is the foundation of any application for the visa, and you can share a little bit how you approached drafting them, getting them signed, the experts, how did you reach out to them? Because again, you signed them very quickly. And did you reach out to them maybe before the strategy session, or what was kind of your thinking and process of getting this done so quickly? Because again, I think here people should optimize for speed, and any kind of advice on getting this done as quickly as possible would be super relevant.
Yeah, sure. So first, I'd like to say that actually what saved me, I guess tens of hours, was the strategy session with you, because the process of learning, figuring out what you actually should do is overly time consuming. And once you know what exactly you need to prepare, it's easier to just sit and do it. All the time. So it's worth taking a strategy session if you'd like to do it quick.
Different days. I don't know what was kind of your approach, and I'm just talking about the experience of various clients and what they do to help themselves unblock. So what was your maybe a tips, and kind of what helped you actually get it done so quickly? Was there anything else that you like, any other mental models and tips that you can share that helped you get this done so quickly and also so well and so efficiently?
Well, I started with composing kind of a plan. So I described the evidences that I need to have, and a plan beforehand what they should contain. So I knew I need like a piece containing the description of this project, and then I need some, I don't know, screenshots or other evidence, hard say so evidence included there. And I also pre-planned where I would need some extra reference letters. And I also asked the people to sign these letters beforehand, so in advance, so that when the letters are ready, they can be quickly signed. I guess that's really it. So when you have kind of a checklist and you just go over it, you think like, okay, today I'm doing this one piece or this one letter, and you write it and it's done, and then you see like you have 8 more left, and the next day you do another one. It works pretty quickly this way. I guess it's simpler than just starting from scratch without knowing what you should include in this document. So really plans are cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think one thing that we skipped is talking about the mandatory criteria and any other documents that you used for meeting the leadership criteria and proving that you are a leader in tech. Maybe you could share a little bit about that as well.
Yeah. So to prove the mandatory criteria, I used a high salary evidence, comparing my salary from my current job and my previous job to some statistics about how many data analysts earn in Russia and how much. And it was really simple. The hardest part of it was to get the official translation of some pieces of my agreement with the employer. But it took like 3 days or so. Another evidence was a letter from my scientific advisor in the lab. He's a famous scientist. He vouched for me that I did a great job in the lab, that my work was important, that it helped them to progress with their projects, and that he invited me to take part in the conference. And let me think. The third piece was about my role in the creation of the game. It explained that I wasn't just a person on a huge team, that I was in the heart of it, that my decision had the most direct impact on the project, and how exactly some decisions influenced its fate, its future, and that now the game is out, it's successful, it's live. So I guess those were the three pieces that I submitted to the mandatory criteria.
Yeah, got it. Some of them, I think everybody tries to submit things like high pay, which isn't always the strongest evidence that people would have. But if you have slots, I think that you can submit it. Some people would choose other documents that are a little bit maybe that look stronger, but it all depends, of course, on your current salary and what you're comparing it against. But I think it's the easiest document that you can submit, and as you mentioned, you should get the documents translated that are not in the in English. So this is also the requirement. So just do make sure that technician can read your documents, which I think is very important. As we move kind of closer to the end of the live stream, just wanted to remind people who are watching this live that you can get your questions answered live if you wish, but also you can ask them later in comments. And I try to get through to them as well. So if you look back on your experience applying for the visa and getting endorsed, so what are your general thoughts about the process? How difficult and challenging was it for you? What are your takeaways? And basically just, I guess, a little bit of a reflection on your journey from just learning about it and to getting endorsed and preparing to move to the UK soon. Anything that you would like to share with people who are maybe right now working on their documents?
Yeah, actually, I want to start with, I guess, a question that concerns a lot of people. It's about the distinction between the exceptional talent and exceptional promise visa. I was in the middle, on the border line between those two, because depending on how you count my work experience, it is either 4.5 years or 5 years. So it was really up to me to decide whether I'd like to apply for a talent or a promise. And I thought that it would be safer to state that I have less than 5 years of experience to still be eligible for the promise visa. But I applied for the talent. And in the end, I got endorsed for a promise. But I still think that this was the best decision, because in the case that if I failed to prove some of the criteria, I would still be eligible for promise. Thinking of the process overall, I'd say that it was really quick in the end. And this was the thing that I wanted from the beginning. So it was really important for me to relocate as soon as possible. And it worked out, I guess. The time that I was preparing the documents was really stressful. You put huge effort into something and you don't know if it will work out. It's really frustrating, you feel tired, you feel exhausted, and still you have to do it, even though there's nothing guaranteed to you. It cost me some peace of mind, of course. I took some time to calm down and to recover after the submission. Well, but still, from now, it seems like it was not so hard. It's usually with hard project, I guess it works like this. So I really advise you guys to try it. Even if you don't get your endorsement, you will have an exhaustive description of your projects and achievements that you can use, for example, during your future interviews, or writing your CV, or just thinking about you in terms that you are actually a very talented professional.
Yeah. It's a good thing to do for your career in general. It's like a retrospective of what you have done. And it forces you to do it very quickly and in a stressful environment. But then you have this application that you can just use whenever you feel down and you feel that you haven't achieved anything. Because once you write the application, you do feel much more confident about your abilities and as a professional. This is what a lot of people share, that it's a good exercise to go through. And yes, I can agree. Like, it seems very stressful in the process when I was applying, and then as I'm helping others increase their chances of getting endorsed, it is very stressful, and it feels like it will. Sometimes it's like it will never end, and there is too much, and this is what people feel. But then you just get it done, kind of. Step by step. And what you shared about having a plan, I think is so important, and having a way to track your progress. I think, like, using any task management tool that you like. So people use different tools. Like, I like to use Trello for tracking kind of work. People use other Asana or anything like that. I don't know if you had any tool that you would recommend that helped you organize your thoughts and work through the massive number of documents that you need to prepare.
Well, I use Notion for pretty much everything that I do.
Yeah, it is a popular thing as well. So just find a tool that you like, and it doesn't have to be anything specific. Something that helps you get this done quickly, but you need a way to organize your work, because if it's all over the place and in different documents, then it will be just hard to keep track of what's happening and what is ready and what's not ready. So having a system, I think, is really helpful, and also having like a timeline and a plan that this is what you're working on this week, and then this is what you're working on next week. This is really helpful as well. So thank you so much for sharing this. We also had a little bit of just a feedback from Alina that Tanya's experience with Technician is awesome. We really appreciate it. And big thanks for Nadia to bring it up. Thank you so much for the comment. It's such a pleasure for me to talk to Tanya today and listen to her story and get to learn from her experience. I think Tanya is an example for everybody, basically, who wants to submit a winning application for a technician visa very quickly. And I do hope that this story was encouraging for you, everybody who's watching this. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining today. Thank you so much, Tanya, for agreeing to share your story with us and just devoting your time on a Sunday to sharing this. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed sharing the story, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I hope that it will be helpful for any data analysts and other professionals.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I honestly, I did feel like in the beginning that people, I think, worried too much about like being not the same profession that the guest on my live stream, and thinking that this is not really applicable for them. But the tips that you shared are applicable to pretty much any IT professional who applies. And the general tips, I think, they're all valid, and the specific tips on formulating the documents, I think, is also very valid. So I'm sure that this will be helpful for many people. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching this. And thank you so much, Tanya, again. And I wish everybody a nice Sunday and a great week ahead. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.